This MFL MarMac Coach Conversation brought to you by Havlicek Trucking, Meyer Auto Service, and Birdnow Chevrolet. Head Coach Dan Anderson joining us. Final non-district game for you guys last week, Coach. 33-6 loss for New Hampton. I know with the situation you're in, with the injury situation, you had to go back and reteach a lot of the things you did early in camp since you got a lot of new guys out there on that account, the progression with the new guys since they've had to start taking the majority of the varsity snaps, how have they progressed in the time where they've been the number one guys?
Yeah, I mean they're giving everything they can. They're still making some mistakes, and mistakes that some guys probably wouldn't make if they'd been playing there for 4 weeks or 5 weeks of practice. But I thought Bryce Jones did a great job playing running back and corner for us, and that was his first action at running back, um, and his first action at corner. He's played outside linebacker before, and I thought he had a really good game. I think he had like 9 tackles maybe or something, and maybe 7 carries for maybe 36 yards. I think he averaged about 5 yards a carry or something. So which is great. And yeah, I mean, we had to lean more on Eli, our quarterback, to run the ball. And when you got a lot of guys out of position, throwing the ball's tough enough. When there's a lot of things that can go wrong. You have to have good protection. You have to have guys running the correct routes. You have to have a good throw, and you gotta beat some guys on one-on-ones. And a lot of our receivers weren't getting open. And they just maybe don't have the experience and the skill level there, and it made it tougher to throw the ball. But New Hampton was just a better football team. I mean, it's just plain and simple for the guys that we had out there. We're starting to get a little bit healthier now. We got a few guys back. We still have some that'll probably be out for the season, but hopefully we can just continue to progress and get better week to week.
And you walked into my next question about your overall health. Are things moving in as good of a direction as they possibly can right now?
Yeah, we didn't lose anybody to injury on Friday night, which was the other weeks have been pretty tough on us. Everybody came out. There's going to be your typical bruises and banged up and stuff and soreness, obviously, but nobody got taken out of the game on a stretcher or hopped off the field on one leg. So yes, we're getting healthier. We had 6 starters out last Friday night. I think we'll have 3 of those guys back for the start of district play. 3 of them, I think, are out for the season, which is unfortunate. These kids put a lot of time in the off season, and to go out and have your season over in the first, one of them was the first series of the scrimmage, and then 2 other guys, their season ended probably in week 2 in the first quarter. So it's kind of frustrating for a coach, and you feel bad for those kids, but it's opportunities for other kids, and we are getting healthier. We still don't have everybody back, but we're trending in the right direction.
And of the guys that unfortunately might be out for the season, are you doing your best to keep those guys involved, keep those guys engaged, and are they doing their best to do the same?
Sure, yeah. I mean, they're out there, they're still part of that football team. They're coming to all the practices. They're out there, as like a student coach. They're still taking mental reps, even though some of them might not be back this season. I guess the good thing is 2 of those guys that are injured and probably out for the season. They are underclassmen. One was a starter as a freshman, the other one was a sophomore, and those guys obviously have more years. I feel bad for Coda Warrington, he's the one that got injured in the scrimmage on the first series, and he tore an ACL, so he's done for the season. And it's his senior year, but those are that's part of football, and that's part of all sports. But yeah, those kids are still engaged. They're still coming to practice. They're out there. They're cheering on their teammates. They're out there. On in practice, they're holding yard markers and things like that if we're in a 2 minute to try to help out practice any way they can, and that's just being a true team player.
And this week, you start district play. It's a little bit different of a look in the district this year as compared to a gauntlet that you've had the last few years. Not that there isn't good teams in this district. What has been your your assessment, I guess, of the teams in your district to this point?
Well, as of I think as of last week, there's 48 teams in Class 1A, and the number 2, 3, and 4 passing teams in the state of Iowa are all in our district, yards passing. So we have got teams in our district that like to air it out and put up a lot of yards passing. I mean, Comanche and Northeast Goose Lake and Cascade are three of the top five passing teams in the state of Iowa in Class 1A football. So we're going to see teams that really like to air it out. And then, of course, this week we have Dyersville Beckman, who's they're big. You know, they're the by far the biggest team we'll see all year. Their offensive line, four of their five starters are 6'3" and 250 or bigger. You know, I mean they're big boys up front, and they've got big running backs too. You know, their backs are all like 190 pounds plus too, and they've got three of them. So they've got the right style of football for the personnel that they have. They like to pound the football.
And as for looking at your own team, I know your identity has always been running the football. Looking at the New Hampton game from a macro standpoint, you did rush the ball for 163 yards and you averaged 4.9 yards per carry. That's the macro look at it. Are you satisfied with those numbers, and what else goes into assessing how well you're running the football?
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's pretty good because to be honest with you, sometimes those numbers can be skewed if you have a 60-yard run. You know what I
Yeah.
mean, Darren? I mean, or you have, a guy that busts a couple for 40 or 50 yards. We didn't have any big runs on Friday night. The only runs we had that were probably over 10 yards got called back by penalty, which was frustrating too, because we had, our passing stats weren't great, but we had, I think, one or two passes that we maybe got 20, 30 yards on, and there was a penalty. Or we had a kickoff return to midfield right before halftime, and then there's somebody blocks, back 25 yards back and gets a personal foul, some bonehead thing like that. You can't have that when you're try to win a game and you're a little bit you know, outmanned, and you can't have mistakes like that. So really that 4.9 is a true 4.9 yards per carry because there we didn't have any big runs, and that's kind of happens sometimes when some of your starters, that are your fastest kids, they were out, and we've got kids that are giving their all and they're running hard, but obviously maybe they don't have the speed or quite the ability that some of those other guys have. And they give us a good effort, and they were just grinding it out and getting that 3 to 6 yards per carry over and over again. And obviously teams know that we like to run the ball, so they're putting a lot of guys in the box. And those were hard earned yards, and I can live with that 4.9 yards per carry.
And is that a sign that at least with the guys you got out there, things are moving in the right direction in that aspect of your offense?
Yeah, I mean, but yards is one thing. We got to put points on the board. We
Yeah.
got to finish drives. I mean, that's the big thing is, we if you don't have big plays and you have to grind it out, 14 yard, 14 play drives, you got to play mistake-free football. You can't have a big penalty. You can't have a fumble. You can't have a sack. And that's kind of the things that have happened to us offensively. And then on the flip side, defensively, we've just given up too many big plays this year. New Hampton didn't have too many big plays against us, but they were able to move the ball and just, they just kind of started pulling away. It's 7-0, 14-0, and then we were playing pretty good first half, and then right before halftime, we threw a pick six, with 40 seconds before half, and that was kind of a tough one, but it happens, and that then it's 20-0 at halftime, and New Hampton just kind of progressively pulled away. We were moving the ball, we just weren't capitalizing. We weren't putting together long enough drives to put points on the board, and defensively, we just weren't getting the stops. We didn't get any interceptions. I think maybe one fumble recovery. We got to cause more turnovers. We got to get some stops on third down.
And we touched on your district overall. Do you like the fact that you got some new opponents in this district? Does that create a little bit of fun and maybe a little bit more of a challenge from the coaching staff as compared to the similar opponents that you've had the last couple of district cycles?
Yeah, these are some teams that it's kind of nice to see some new competition. Kids like it as coaches. You like to scheme against some new teams and see some just different players and different schemes that you haven't seen before. We haven't seen Comanche since 2006, and we've never played against Northeast Goose Lake and Lisbon. We haven't seen them for probably 5, 6 years. So in Beckman, though, I mean, we're kind of familiar with Beckman and Cascade. We haven't seen them for a few years, but we've had some real, slugfest with Beckman. I mean, they've got us in the playoffs a couple years ago, then we got them the next year. So I mean, we're kind of familiar with each other, and they kind of run the same style. They're a running team. They're a shotgun wing T team where we do some shotgun wing T, but we're under center quite a bit too. So we're pretty familiar with what Beckman likes to run and their schemes.
And what's impressed you about the Blazers on film to this point?
Well, they're very aggressive on defense. They've got some good linebackers. They're big up front. Those big offensive linemen I mentioned before, they play defense too. A lot of them, and they rotate on the defensive line. So you're going to have some big boys up in front of you. You better stay low and keep your legs driving. If you try to, chest bump with these guys, they're going to drive you back. It's pad level is going to be a big part of this because we're definitely going to be outsized on the offense and defensive lines. They've got big backs that run hard and deceptively fast. There's number 42. He maybe when he first gets the handoff, his legs don't look like they're moving very fast, and then all of a sudden he breaks through the first line of defenders and he outruns everybody. And he's got some speed. He's deceptively fast. They've got a quarterback that transferred in from Monticello. And he was 1,000-yard passer and 1,000-yard rusher at Monticello last year. So they picked up a quarterback from another school, and they've got a kid that probably was going to be their quarterback that moved to receiver, and he's fast. A white kid is his name, and so they've got a pretty balanced attack. They can throw the ball, they can run the ball. They're big up front, but we understand their style of offense and defense. We run something pretty similar, so obviously I know what gives us fits, and so hopefully we can cause them some problems schematically.
All right, so hopefully you can keep taking steps forward. Do your best to make it a happy homecoming in Monona this week, Coach. Keep your kids healthy, and I will emphasize that one again. Keep your kids healthy. We wish you best of luck.
All right, thanks, Darren.
Dan Anderson, head coach of MFL MarMac, brought to you by Havlicek Trucking, Meyer Auto Service, and Birdnow Chevrolet.